ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Financial Behavioural News. Something happens in the finance world, and we're going to tell you why. Now, welcome to the first pilot episode. Let's dive straight into it. I'll now pass over to Jim, who will explain our first issue.
Today we're going to look at WesFarmers' target scheme. On the 22nd of May 2020, the WesFarmers Group released a note on the ASX informing investors of the performance of its subsidiaries of Kmart and Target. Now, whilst this note seemed like any other, its primary focus wasn't solely an update regarding performance. The note actually contained the announcement of the next strategic corporate event for the group, which was the Target Shaker. Now, this plan aims to revitalise and restructure the Target subsidiary in order to transform its commercial viability and position as a value-enhancing asset. This was a repercussion of the group's ongoing target review, with the findings indicating continued underperformance that had been and would continue to place a burden upon the group's return. Now, the report led to the conclusion and the announcement of what WesFarmers believed to be the best course of action. Now, this shake-up was marketed as a conversion, but in reality, the majority of the stores would be forced to close. Now, both WesFarmers' action and the reaction from government and community were heavily influenced by various financial behaviours. WesFarmers' management was trying to achieve value creation to remediate these issues, but they were really misguided by both optimism and loss aversion. The government condemned the poor timing of the transition, especially in the devastation of the COVID-19, but failed to acknowledge the existing struggle of the entity due to the illusion of control and the availability heuristic. Now, socially, there were outcries from the consumers due to the far-reaching and broad impacts upon the community. Now, these were merely based on assumptions that stemmed from ambiguity aversion and status quo bias. Now, it's very important to note, whilst each of these perspectives from the unique stakeholders was justified, there was a significant lack of empathy that stemmed from various biases. Back to you, Jerry.
Thanks, Jim. You make some great points. So now let's move on to the next topic. So now we know what the context is. I'm now going to pass over to my mate Malcolm, who's going to discuss what really made WesFarmers do their behaviours. And then
WesFarmers was heavily influenced by the optimism bias. Now, the optimism bias consists of the psychological tendency to overestimate favourable outcomes. Now, this is reflected in WesFarmers' decision, as they already had prolonged poor performance and they were already operating in a dying market. And yet, for some reason, they thought by simply converting it to Kmart that they would continue or somehow remediate these issues. Moreover, analysts at Citibank confirmed that this was such an optimistic approach, as they valued the company at close to zero, with an additional brand write-down of $500 million. Now, WesFarmers management also had to face regret aversion. However, they ultimately overcome it by taking some action, but they ultimately took inaction by not just discarding the whole company. Optimism within WesFarmers management created an unrealistic plan, which in addition also had its power dampened due to excess regret aversion. Whilst the perspective of WesFarmers was overly confident due to the mentioned biases, in comparison, the response of society was greatly negatively skewed.
Very, very interesting points there made by my colleague. Now, however, now we understand why WesFarmers did it. Now, what's really interesting to us here at the Financial Behavioural News Centre is the actual economic rationales and motivations behind not only the government's response, but also consumers' response. The perspectives of the government and society is also heavily influenced by psychological biases.
The Australian government is concerned with the economic welfare of Australian citizens, and the loss of so many jobs from the restructure will be detrimental to the economy. Therefore, the government had a swift negative response to the announcement. Now, this was amplified by the Agriculture Minister saying, "It just goes to show they don't give a rat's about us." This was a completely unjustified response from the government and was heavily impacted by the illusion of superiority. The illusion of superiority is whereby there is an overestimation of a company's own qualities and abilities in relation to the same qualities or abilities of others. The illusion of superiority in this context resulted in the minister believing that the large complex company will be more immune to the event of COVID-19 in comparison to that of smaller, which is just undeniably incorrect. With an expected 53 country stores to be closed over the next 12-month period, accordingly, the backlash from rural Australia was severe. Society's negative reaction was due to the loss of jobs, but moreover, the loss of accessibility to essential and affordable consumer goods, with the nearest alternative being up to a 90-minute drive away. As a result of this bias, they failed to consider the positive implications of this, as this may actually reduce the costs and increase accessibility. However, they failed to see this, demonstrating the way in which this bias made their judgment unfair.
And ladies and gentlemen, that's all today. Here at Financial News, we'd like to thank you for watching our first pilot episode. Good night, and remember to stay vigilant and stay financial.